When I was born, my parents named me Robert after my father, but most people call me Bob. I was born in 1920, just a few years after the Great War, and I always had a fascination with airplanes growing up. I imagined what it might be like floating up high among the birds. I always wanted to know what a cloud might feel like. I grew up, graduated school, and spent a few years working as a helper in a local dry cleaners here in town. I didn't really enjoy it, but it allowed me to purchase my first car, a 1929 Ford Model A. Then the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. I enlisted the next week to join the Army. Army life was an experience I never imagined. Structured routine, camaraderie, it sure beat working at the dry cleaner. I was given the opportunity to join the Army Air Corps, and I jumped at the opportunity. I was sent for a physical exam, and then they took me up, my first ever flight. I'll never forget it. My flight instructor started our journey. It was a biplane called a Stearman that was rigged up so it had two controls. The pilot sat in the back, and I sat in the front. At first, he wanted to see how I handled air travel, making sure I didn't get sick or pass out, and then I got to take control of the stick for a while. The experience was beyond anything I'd ever imagined. I was hooked for life. I graduated to basic trainers and then advanced training aircraft, and finally I graduated flight school and was officially a pilot in the Army Air Corps. My first missions took place in a P-39 Era Cobra. That is actually me flying one of those airplanes in the photo you're looking at right now. They gave me $100, and it appeared in a national magazine in 1943. I have the original framed on the wall of my bedroom. The P-39 was an amazing aircraft, and I also flew many missions in the P-40 as well. During my time in the Air Corps, I flew many missions over the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California, hunting for subs and looking for enemy ships. I even got to see what a cloud feels like. It actually doesn't feel like anything. I was slightly disappointed. My next dream was to fly the P-38 Lightning, but that never happened. I was only ever single-engine certified, and as it was determined that my flight group was going to be doing only home defense missions, there was no need to certify me in a dual-prop airplane. I was disappointed, but I still get to fly, and that made up for it. Then the war ended, and I went home. I got a job working at a local factory, got my civilian pilot license in 1948, and saved up to buy my first airplane in 1952. A small civilian-style Cessna. I would have to be a responsible adult during the week, but I spent my weekends up in the clouds. Little did I know that one day I'd have an encounter far more terrifying than anything I encountered during the war. It was 1984, and my wife and I had flown down to Florida to visit some family there, and we were out having a little sightseeing flight around the beach and some of the golf resorts. It was a beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky. As we were flying over this wooded area that had a grassy field in the center of it that you could almost tell was a long, abandoned grass runway, this old biplane came creeping up behind us at hour 6 o'clock. At first I thought maybe we were under attack or something. It was a very aggressive move that was taught to us in flight school. This old biplane had just pulled off a perfect Immelmann turn and was directly behind us. I thought to myself, this is 1984, this is Florida, we can't be under attack. Next thing I know, this biplane pulls right up next to us. I'll never forget it. It was a pristine Curtiss Jenny, khaki-colored fuselage with walnut-colored wings. On the side was the words Hickory Dickory Dock painted in red letters. It also had what I knew to be a great war flight insignia as well. The hat in the Ring Squadron insignia. The pilot was young, dressed in a leather flight jacket and helmet, obviously having the time of his life. I knew that feeling myself, and seeing his excitement, I couldn't even be mad at him. It's something only a pilot would fully understand. I thought I must have found an enthusiastic young pilot who flew in reenactments or something. The pilot gave a big smile, and he waved at us, and then broke left away from us. That's when the terror started. The top wing broke right off of his airplane, the bottom wing collapsed, and his Curtiss Jenny plummeted into the ground on the old runway in a terrible fireball. I tried to fly over the scene to see if I could land to help him out, but there was no room for me to land, but I knew there was a golf course nearby, so I headed that way. A few minutes later, I landed on the fairway of one of the holes, much to the chagrin of a few of the golfers, and asked for help. One of the golfers gave me his golf cart, and we rode to the nearest phone to call for the fire department. I sat there in the clubhouse in a panic. Had I just witnessed this poor young man's death? It was at that point when the fire chief himself came looking for me. He asked if I was the one who called in the fire at the old airfield. I told him it was. He asked me if I had a habit of calling in hoaxes to the fire department. I didn't understand. He told me there was no crashed plane in that area, no fire. I ran back to my airplane as quickly as I could and took off headed back to the airfield where I had just had that terrifying experience. Surely enough, there was no fire, no airplane, no young pilot. It was untouched. My wife was with me. She saw it too. I wasn't crazy, unless, were we both hallucinating somehow? We flew around for a few minutes trying to gather our thoughts, and then we landed at a small local airport. We taxied to a spot and went into the main building, hoping to get our heads around what had one down earlier that day when we saw it. Right there on the wall was a picture. The same Curtis Jenny with Hickory Dickory Dock and the hat and the ring insignia on it. The same young man posing next to it. I asked the man working the radio controls about the photo. He told me this was his great-uncle. He was a member of Eddie Rickenbacker's flight squad back in World War I. When he got home, he purchased an old Curtis Jenny and would fly around the area for fun. Unfortunately, he crashed not too far from here in 1921. I said to him, "You're not going to believe the story I have for you," and began to tell him what we witnessed that day. He seemed a little taken aback by it all, but it made sense. He had felt there was something different about the skies around that airstrip. The young pilot was a World War I flying ace who survived the war only to perish on that very landing strip. When they showed me a picture closer of his face, it was undeniable. It was him, still flying the skies over southern Florida in his Curtis Jenny, an experience I will never forget.